Paige, I know you're a strengths coach who helps people with professional development, but what exactly does that mean?
Yeah. So I help people discover the unique talents inside of them and invest in those talents to feel more engaged in their jobs or to achieve goals or to feel more empowered overall in their lives. I do a lot of my coaching in a business setting, helping teams to work more strongly together. So think of it this way. If you all of a sudden discover that you could kick a soccer ball really far and you wanted to see if you could invest in that talent to make it to the World Cup, you would most likely hire a coach to get to the World Cup, right? So
Yeah.
you probably think, I need to build up my sprinting capacity. I need to strengthen my foot skills, right, around the soccer ball. And I need to increase my knowledge of all the plays. So a coach would likely help guide you through that process. So that's the role that I play, only I do it in the business world.
That's super cool. How can you help people discover the talents that you're talking about?
Yeah, so I use a tool specifically called the Clifton Strengths Assessment. It used to be called the Strengths Finder Assessment. There's all these books connected with this assessment, and I take a lot of this information and distill it to help it become easily manageable for the people that I work with, right? So as of April of this year, of 2020, over 23 million people around the world have taken this assessment. You can just go onto the website. I can post a link, and anyone can go take it on their own. I recommend doing it with a coach because then it helps you understand how to use this information to your own advantage, because it can be pretty overwhelming when you do it on your own, right? But it is simple enough to go do it on your own. The reason why I like it so much is I'm a big fan of language, and it gives us words to help us easily identify different types of talent within us that we maybe haven't thought of, the right language or the right words to describe those types of talent. So today, I actually want to teach you some ways that you can tap into how these talents show up inside of you without even having to take this assessment that I use. So just some tools and tricks that you can do at home on your own. This assessment, it's rooted in positive psychology. And so when we start to focus our attention from what we need to fix, which is what a lot of us start with, right? Like society has kind of told us to focus on our weaknesses and fix those. So if we flip that and we start with this idea of what's right with us, what's already good and positive inside of us, that can be a really, really powerful shift.
Can you give us an example of what happens when you put in the tools and you receive resources to hone in on your skills versus your weaknesses?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I actually have a screen I'm going to share that gives a really great example of this. So there was a study that the University of Nebraska did, and it was about effective techniques for teaching speed reading. And they had taken thousands of high school kids around in the surrounding areas of the University of Nebraska. And they put the kids into, these were high school students, they put them into different classes or courses to teach speed reading, because the purpose of the study at the time was to understand which teaching methodology was most effective. But what they learned at the very end of the study, when they combined all the information, was that the biggest difference was when you broke all of the students into two different groups. Those who were average readers in the beginning of the study and those who were already above average readers. And so when they divided those two groups up, you can see that the average readers were at 90 words per minute and the above average readers were at 350 words per minute. So this was before they had entered into any of the speed reading courses, but already a pretty big difference in terms of just their natural strength. So then, and it doesn't matter which course they went through, when they put all the students together, they realized, okay, the average readers jumped up in general about 67%. So they went from 90 words per minute to 150 words per minute. So now for those above average readers who were starting at 350 words per minute, what do you think, Allison, happened with this group? Where do you think they went after they went through their speed reading courses and took their second test?
Sure. Well, based on what you're telling me, if we really sit down and give people resources to excel at something that they're already good in naturally, I would think that you would see a very significant improvement. So if the other group, their reading went up by 67%, I would say at least double that.
Yeah, well, this is awesome because you're paying attention. So a lot of people think that we tend to cap at talent, right? So when I talk to a lot of people, they think, okay, if they already started above average at about 350 words per minute, you know, maybe they went down, maybe they stayed the same, maybe they went up to 400 words per minute. But since you understand what we're trying to talk about here, you're ahead of the game. So they actually went up to 2,900 words per minute, which is a 729% increase.
Wow.
So yeah, to your point, like this is showing when you start from a place of talent and you invest in that, that's how much higher you can go, instead of trying to start from a place of, you know, maybe not so much talent and invest in that. Yeah, maybe we can all get to a level of great, but where are those opportunities to get to a level of excellence?
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. I think that really reminds me of a couple classes I took in college simultaneously. I was taking a computer science class and a humanities class, and I was doing like more or less on both of them, but I had a tutor helping me with both classes. But I really struggled. You know this, I'm not really good with technology, and I really struggled with the computer science class, even with the tutor. But then I would simultaneously, I was going to see a tutor for the humanities class, and just that little time extra that I dedicated to having someone really take the time and help me zone in on arts and humanities type of classes really helped me get ahead. But it was kind of disappointing because I was putting in so much effort to the computer science, and it was just something that I struggled with. And I remember just being kind of feeling deflated, you know, because I was putting in all this effort. But now it makes sense why, when I invested in something that I was already naturally good at, when I just received a little bit more training and encouragement, I was able to get way farther.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that example. I mean, it's kind of like that parable that a lot of people repeat of, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, that fish is going to spend its whole life thinking it's stupid, right? So how can we, as leaders in different capacities, right, help the little fish learn how to swim better? Because that's your example of humanities, right? When you had a tutor, or if you have a coach or a mentor in your life who can help you identify these areas of a little bit of talent, and then you pick it up faster and you can excel in that area.
That's a really great way of looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to help you learn 3 different approaches to tap into, how do I identify talent inside of myself? Okay. So if we start with the first, a great question to start with is, have you ever stopped to wonder why you do certain things that you do? So most of us just do things a certain way, and we don't even notice that they're things that come easily to us, which might not be the case for others, right? We just think, oh, well, everyone thinks that way, or everyone does it that way, because it comes so easily, and we don't realize how unique we are with that. So to give an example, I want to play a game. You ready to play a game, Allison?
I am.
We're always up for games.
We are. We love them.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We're going to go to, this is called Raise Your Hand If. So if you talk to people in elevators, airplanes, grocery stores, wherever you go.
Yeah, that's me.
This is hardcore you.
Yes.
The second one is raise your hand if you always have a color-coded or otherwise organized closet.
Ooh, I do too.
Do you also?
Yeah, I take
This
a
is
lot.
fun to talk about with groups because there were people who stand up and could talk for 5 minutes on their organizational techniques, and they get really passionate about it, and it's super
Yeah.
fun.
I could too, but this is not the video for that.
Okay, fair. We'll do a second video on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So raise your hand if you always write down a list of things to do and stick to it. Not so
No.
much, you.
No.
So for some people, they can even do this on the weekends, and they're the list people through and through, which I find really cool. I'm not one of those people either. Raise your hand if you always need to pick someone to race while driving. You're a little competitive. You like to race people?
No.
I'm halfway in there, but it's not always for me.
Sounds dangerous.
Fair. Be a safe driver, folks. That's the takeaway. Raise your hand if you always ask a lot of questions.
Yes.
I need to raise 2 hands for this one. This is me all the time, and it explains a lot.
You're a very inquisitive and curious person.
This is true. It's a true statement.
Yeah.
All right, and then the last one, raise your hand if you always push the elevator button a second time, or perhaps 52 times to remind it that you're there.
No, I think 1 is enough.
Very fair. There's a lot of people who would disagree with you and say 1 is certainly not enough.
Interesting.
Right? It is interesting. And so that's a fun activity. I'm going to stop the screen share there. But that's a fun activity that if you do this at home and you go back through and you kind of press pause on these different examples and write down your own thoughts, you're actually looking for examples of natural talent. That's what these are. These are examples of talent, and they help us get glimpses into how we think or how we act, which we probably hadn't given much thought to. So when we start to pay attention to why we do things or how we do them, right? Why do I feel compelled to organize my closet in a color-coded manner, right? Or how we do it. How I organize my closet is a way that just comes naturally to me, and I don't even have to think about it, but it makes sense in my brain. We can start to use that information and understand this is a place of talent. Not everybody does things this way. How can I use this in the future for my own development?
That reminds me of the first time that I took the assessment, actually, and going through them, I was kind of like, I think I shared with you, I was a little disappointed because, as you said, there are natural strengths. They come naturally to us. They come easily. And so you assume you perform them without even thinking about them.
Right.
And so ergo, you think that everybody can do that. And it wasn't until I really sat down and talked with you where you were like, no, like other people cannot necessarily do this. And you should relish in the fact that it comes easy and maybe like learn some skills and new tools so that you can really hone in on that and perfect it.
Yeah, exactly. And another way of thinking about it is it's not that not everyone can do these, it's that it doesn't always come to the surface for them, right? So I think of it as like if you think of a handyman who's coming to, fix something in your house. I'm going to do a traditional, I'm going to say man. I don't know if handy woman, I guess that works too.
Handy person.
Thank you. This is why I keep you around. You help me with the right language. So think of Allison, the handy person, coming to my house to help fix some stuff. What tools in your tool belt are at the surface that you use all the time and you don't even have to think of how to work them, right? So you can grab a hammer and hammer in a nail without even having to give a lot of thought to it. Whereas you may have to give thought to some other things, like how to use a wrench, or I don't know, I should stop talking about tools because a hammer is pretty much my extent, but you get the purpose, right? So what tools rise to the surface for you that you use all the time? Like that's a way to think about your natural talents. So for example, one of the ones which, since I know you, I can point it out, you are one of those people who loves to chat it up. right? With strangers, no matter where you are.
Mhm.
So how does that, knowing that that's a talent of yours, how does that show up in the work that you do?
Well, I had to think about it for a second because honestly, yeah, I mean, you talk to people in the supermarket, like, so what? Doesn't everybody do that? But upon really thinking about it, I was able, it, first of all, it helps me in my personal life, right? Being new to the city, to Las Vegas, being able to go to art galleries or to parks and to strike up conversations has really been a really great way for me to meet friends. But also professionally, what I do in my current role as a community manager, I foster relationships with people. So I'm tapping into several of my strengths, actually, things that have to do with empathy and harmony, and it's understanding people from that come from different circles, different backgrounds, and being able to develop empathy for them and the situations that they're going through. And so I'm able to create these little ecosystems of people that want to live and work together to create an impact in the community. And I like one of the main things is being able to communicate with people, right?
Yeah, exactly. And when you think about how you're drawing on a lot of those things that come easily to you, a way to wrap up, again using language, right? Like a way to wrap up a lot of those different talents is to say it comes very naturally to you to build relationships. And that's important to hone in on because that helps you understand your motivation for the work that you're doing, right? Versus if you think about someone who says, well, I like to make lists every day, that person's motivation might come more from the work that's being done and the accomplishments that get checked off every day. So that may be more motivating, the work being the example versus the people for that person. Whereas for you, the people and the relationships that you are easily able to build is a big motivator in the work that you do. From what I know about you, would you agree?
Yes, 100% in both my personal and professional life. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. All right. Should we talk about another approach?
Sure.
Okay. So this is my second approach. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. And we've got now, let's see. Okay. So this is, you'll see the little number twos at the top. So the last approach was number one. This is approach number two, and it's called Soaring with Your Strengths. And this comes from this book written by Don Clifton, which is why it's called the Clifton Strengths Assessment. And so he identified these 5 areas that help you understand when you're in your strengths zone. So the first question to ask yourself, and if when you're watching this video at home, you may want to pause and write down these questions or start to think about them in between each one, because this is going to help give you indicators or clues. So question number 1, what activities am I drawn to? So what activities naturally energize me and I feel like I'm a magnet to them? And this is what's called yearning.
Uh-huh. I think something that comes to mind to me, obviously, is doing things with people, right? Going out and meeting them for drinks, participating in some sort of panel discussion, participating in a play, but being around other people and together building something. That's something that gives me a lot of energy, that nourishes me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so those are great clues to tap into, to understand how can I do more of that, right? To satisfy this yearning.
Right.
Second question, what activities give me a buzz where I think, when can I do that again, right? This is what they described as that feeling of satisfaction.
Like the song,
Yep.
satisfaction, satisfaction.
You find yourself singing in the
Satisfaction.
middle of an activity, that's a good clue.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you think back upon moments of success that you've had and you think, when can I do that again? Or you have thought, when can I do that again? That's a great indicator of moments in the past where you've been in your strength zone, and that's when you can start to use that to inform your future.
Sure.
So the third question is, what kinds of activities do I seem to pick up quickly? So this is called rapid learning. This is like when you seem to kind of already know the next steps to be taken.
Mm-hmm.
You ever had that happen?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you're in that area of rapid learning, that's an indicator. If you're like, oh yeah, I get this easily, pay attention to that, because there are a lot of things that other people don't get easily, right? So that's, again, just make sure that we keep repeating, not everyone's the same, right? This is helping you understand your unique qualities.
Mm-hmm.
So number 4, or question 4, I should say, is during what activities have I had moments of subconscious excellence when I thought, how did I do that? So this is labeled as glimpses of excellence.
Would it qualify? I've been training for the last couple of years. I started running, and I did a 5K within like the first 6 months that I started like going to the gym, and I've built it up that I'm actually training for a marathon right now. And yeah, I'm from, if I think back to when I first started, every single day I document, the distance that I run, how fast I'm running, and every day, like I can see that progress. And I always find myself saying, oh my gosh, like, how did you get to this point? And so, glimpses of excellence. Yeah, I can definitely, see in the distance, I can see me completing that 24-kilometer race.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love it. Good on you. That's fantastic that you found something. And that's a great example of physical talent, right? So you have these moments where you're like, how did I just run 7 miles or 12 miles? And so a lot of this strengths work is in, our mental talent. But yeah, I mean, that's a great example for sure. So then number 5, in what activities do I seem to automatically know the steps to be taken? And so this one we call the flow, being in the flow, which also is probably where you are when you're running, right? You're in the flow. So this is an example of when you need to ad lib. Let's say, for example, you can ad lib very well, right? When the steps, maybe when a step is skipped, you can work on the fly. So this idea of being in the flow is you can gain momentum and still perform from a level of excellence, and you get better every single time you do it. That makes sense?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's really crazy that you mentioned this, because literally one of my strengths is adaptability, and that's what it is. It's being able to go with the flow, being able to adjust and to pivot. And that's in a way, that I kind of think I do improv sometimes. And really what improv is just being really present and in the moment, and listening to what other people are saying, leaving preconceived notions at the door, and then adding on to that. So it requires you just to adapt to the circumstances, not be bogged down with what you thought, how you thought a scene or a situation in the workplace was going to go, and just being able to adjust constantly. And that's what I can tell you, that this is something that I apply on the daily.
Yeah. And that's a great example. I love that, because that improv is kind of a great example for life, I guess, right? And yeah, but being in the flow, being able to adapt, being able to pivot is a really great example. I love that. And it makes sense, like when you think about what talents rise to the surface for you, right? What are at the top of your toolbox? It makes sense that you would be amazing at improv.
Obviously.
Not so much.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. So that is my second approach. So again, to recap, these questions that you can ask yourself talk about yearning, satisfaction, rapid learning, glimpses of excellence, and flow. And so I always say to the people I'm coaching, use the past to help inform your future, right? So when you can dissect what was going on in these situations maybe that have led to excellence, these situations that you've been performing at all capacities, however you want to explain it, right? When you've had moments of success and you've enjoyed what you're doing, when you can dissect those and identify those, then you can intentionally use that information to take steps to do more work that way in the future.
Sure.
So, any other thoughts on that? Or otherwise, I can go to our third approach.
Go right ahead.
Okay, great. All right. So our third approach is to start to tap into your values. And when I say values, I don't just mean I want world peace, right? Like, I mean, there are some big concepts that a lot of people align on. But what I mean in this context of values is to really drill down to what values show up almost every day at work. So what's that invisible rudder that's guiding you towards the choices you make at work and towards those gut feelings, right? Like we all have those moments where our gut tells us, make this decision. Don't talk to that person. Do talk to that person, right? Do work on that project. So when you start to listen to that can be your values speaking up. So I'll give you an example from myself to help make this a little bit more concrete. And I didn't really have the language at the time to understand it as well, but one of my values through the very beginning of my career is this idea of seeing people, truly seeing them, and being seen too, and being appreciated as an individual. So I know this is a strong driver inside of me because I bristle actually. Like I get that nagging feeling in my gut, or I get the little tingly spidey sense when that's not happening, right? So if people get grouped into a category, or if their intents are being generalized in a way that I can clearly see how that's counterintuitive, that's when my values are speaking up, saying this doesn't feel right. And so what I have to remember when that happens is that others don't clearly see that in the same way that I do. This gut feeling that I have, this value of truly seeing people, it's actually a talent that I use now in my career every single day. But I had to do the work to understand that it's a value that really I have placed so much weight on because it's actually a natural talent of mine. My talent is I can really help people see themselves as individuals. And so when we do a little bit of work, so I'll share the screen to give an example, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Allison. But
Sure.
so we did flow, that was our last one. So if we think of our values as our why, right? Kind of our everyday why. Why do we do the things we do at work? Why do we make the decisions that we do? Then we can start to uncover all these little hows of talent and how they're connected together, right? So a lot of times our values help us identify why we make a decision. And our talents either can help us navigate the how we're going to act on that decision, or they can tell us how, as in how that was connected to our value, right? Because a lot of times they go hand in hand.
That's very interesting. Well, and just to go back for a minute to what you're talking about, it works out perfectly that you are a strengths coach, because obviously you do these classes. You teach people in a group how to tap into their inner strengths, but how to create a dynamic in the workplace where people are able to communicate more efficiency and work with each other and draw on each other's strengths. But then you being able to recognize people as an individual and meet them where they are and really like listen and process it. And I can see your analytical skills at play. It works out perfectly that you're a strengths coach because you're able to help people hone in on those individual skills.
Why, thank you. I appreciate it. And yes, you do. You called out my analytical, which I'm super analytical. And when I was trying to unpack a lot of this, because I was like, well, I don't understand, because I like to connect the dots, but I don't like it with numbers, right? Like I'm not as analytical with numbers, although I do like details, but I'm really much more motivated by analyzing people. And so that's how I got to the idea of people are my data points. And this is true in my previous career and my current career. And when I think of what motivates me in the future, is if I can use people as my data points and use my analytical brain to connect the dots between those people, right? And understanding what makes them unique and maybe understanding what relationships to bridge,
Sure.
then that's where I'm working in my strength zone. And that's when you can see it. So what about you? How do you have any ideas of how your talents and values are connected?
Sure. I mean, I think right off the top of my bat, right off the top of my head, I think about things like my values are harmony, things that have to do with consistency. It bothers me that there are people on this planet that there's a lot of inequality that just really bothers me. And there's people that are living in war-stricken countries or are going through extreme poverty. So I the type of work that I'm involved in is about leveling that playing field, right? That's where consistency comes in, and just making sure that we all have access to the same tools and resources to get ahead. But one of my driving factors is that inequality and my need to create a harmonious, peaceful, and diplomatic existence for everybody, and just make sure that consistency again. And it's recognizing individual values for sure, but realizing that we're all part of an ecosystem. We all share resources, and whatever I do over here in Senegal affects someone in Brazil. And so I want everybody to, within reason, be on the same level playing field, and that there's, consistent use of resources.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And you can break it down from your job to how you put your talents, or I'll say another way, your job and the important work that you're doing, right? With these ecosystems that you said, and then your values that you infuse into that work, right? And having equality and harmony with these different ecosystems, and then your talents and how you're infusing those talents to meet your values and to do the work to get to your goal of the profession that you've created, right? I mean, you really, you took what you're good at and what your values are so strongly that are your rudder, and they point you towards what seems right to you. And you created this job, you created this path for yourself that motivates you, energizes you, fuels you, right? Like when I think about, just the small time that I've known you, but your conversations and how you get done with a work day just jazzed and so energized, and waking up like, how do I do this again tomorrow? And how do I do it even better, right? And invest in this and do an even better job next time. And it's such a great alignment with talents, values, and then how you put that into action with your job. So it's really cool to see all that with the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, again, these were things that that came naturally to me, that I hadn't really considered strengths until really I met you. So I appreciate us having many, many conversations, and you framing it in this perspective that allows me to realize that these are my inner strengths, and to just keep them in mind every day when I'm going about the world, either in my professional or in my personal life. And when I want to communicate with people, and when I want a message to resonate, to really build it off of my strengths, because that's what's truthful to me. That's what's my driving passion. And ergo, I think that passion transmits to people, and I'm more likely to bring more allies and more people to the table because they're able to identify, because it is something that speaks so strongly to me.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, of course. You're living authentically, right? Like it's one way to just say, okay, I want to show up as my authentic self, but it's another to really understand what that means inside of you and how you're using that, right? If we go back to that speed reading example how you're using those things that you're already naturally showing up at an elevated level from other people, right? Because the whole idea to continue to keep in mind is, even though some of this stuff comes easily to us, we need to remember how unique that makes us. When you think about, if you take the assessment and you get your top 5 talent themes, it measures 5 out of 34, right? But if you think about just the top, which are our signature talent themes, or the top of our toolbox, like I was saying, what we use most often and what comes most naturally to us, the odds of someone else having the same top 5 of you in the same order are 1 in 33 million. So that's like, I know, like, I love being able to say that to people, because that's a really, really cool statistic to think, I do have amazing value to bring to the table. My value is unique. In fact, it's 1 in 33 million people unique, right? And so that's a really cool thing to draw on right now.
Thank you. Well, thank you for helping me tap into my inner strengths and just perform better both in my personal and professional life.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.